Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of There Be Game. Here I'd like to talk about modern science fiction, cyberpunk type of campaigns for a little while. I believe that a lot more people out there would enjoy them, but they're somewhat difficult to get into. They require a very different mindset. There's no obvious monsters, and if there are, it's more on the fantasy side, at least by my count. Here I want to talk about a couple of things that I believe players should keep in mind when they are in these games. And these things are, I don't want to call them obvious because they took me a little while to reach, but on the same side, I believe they will help out a lot and hopefully get some of you people into a new type of game, one that will challenge you. First thing I want to talk about is playing smart. You've got a ton of information at your disposal, even in a fantasy setting, just through archives and libraries. This is amplified by a massive factor in modern and cyberpunk settings, even more so for science fiction. There's a level of information that you simply can access far easier than me just reaching for a book in front of me and reading it. You can probably put it into a computer and get an answer like this. Done. There's your question. It's hard to really explain this simply, that at least at my table, when I'm running something of the fantasy and future variety, I will hit my players with a lot of information. I will hit them with so much information that they don't really know what to make of it, and I simply point to a computer when they ask how do we deal with it. You have a computer. Make it do the work for you because you simply don't have the time. Another thing I want to touch on is, as strange as it sounds, being nice. Because everyone has access to information, doing something bad will come back and haunt you. It's not just a, well, you stabbed my friend from the village, therefore I'm going to stab you. There's a level of interconnection I think a lot of people do miss. And that interconnection is very hard to explain, and I believe somewhat underrepresented in these worlds. Everybody has friends, everybody has contacts, everybody has a network, and that network can rapidly turn around and come back at your character if you sufficiently break the rules of this network. You need to be mindful that everybody you're dealing with has the potential to talk to everybody else. That to expect complete and total isolation is somewhat silly. Most of the time. Another thing I do want to talk about here is that combat also as a whole can be a lot more lethal. In a fantasy game it's possible to get beaten around in your armor or take a few sword wounds and you go, yeah, that sucked, I really don't want to go through that again. Modern settings are just simply that much more lethal as well. And I don't mean guns. I would love to run a fantasy campaign set in a musketeer level theme, that the group is a bunch of musketeers. In modern settings, assassins have got access to very precise tools. If a game master wants the players dead, they will be dead. There's no other way to say it. That if a game master thinks you've really screwed the pooch and somebody's going to take you out, you might as well start working on a new character. The matter is that there's some rifle platforms out there that are stunningly accurate over utterly stunning ranges, that they can hit man-sized targets in excess of a kilometre with the right training behind the person firing it. On the same side, there are things like sarin, VX, plutonium, polonium, cobalt. All of that stuff is highly toxic, and if your character gets it, yeah, goodbye. Thank you for playing. Please come back next session with a new character. So, as a general rule, try and be nice to the people you're dealing with. if they screw you over, don't be vindictive. Do enough to send a message, but don't be vindictive. If you're vindictive, bad reputations form. And when you have a bad reputation, people will react to you badly. And you might not think you've done a whole lot to somebody, but you have. On the same side, and I'd like to make this my final point here, when it comes to reputations, be known for being very minimal in your use of force, because you can shoot somebody, because you can blow up that building or that van, doesn't mean that you should. Let's look at a movie like The Italian Job with Charlize Theron and Mark Wahlberg. They could have just as easily killed the two guards in the armoured van, but they didn't. What did they do? They gassed them, likely with some sort of tranquilizing agent or some sort of tear gas. Sure, it's nasty, and I'll leave those who have been exposed to tear gas to explain how nasty. But on the same side, they could go home. They have a network that has been attacked, but not seriously damaged. There's a difference that when you outwardly go to cause damage, that can come back. That if you're willing to do it, you should accept it being done to you. So ultimately, be nice. Ask for things. The threat of force, the shadow, that can be enough. If you can play to that and you can keep the level of damage down, I'm going to say it's the better way of doing things. Now, this might not work at every table or with every group, but preach it. Spread it out there. Get others thinking. Tell them that you'd like to try something out, and if it doesn't work, you'll run with it. If it does work, you'd like to run with it. In the end, it really does boil down to reactions on another level. That if you can keep things steady, balanced, progressing, forceful enough, you can do a lot more than you can by using too little force or too much. Now, in my next video, what I'd like to do is talk about cyberpunk and science fiction settings from a games master's point of view. So, if you're a player, check it out. It might have something to give you another set of ideas. If you're a game master, hopefully you'll be watching it right after this one. Thank you for your time.